What does all this AI stuff mean? We're all getting buried under an avalanche of technobabble related to artificial intelligence. You see all these words flying around. Not only is there AI, but there's ASI, you got AGI, there are LLMs, metaverse, Web3, crypto, blockchain. I mean, it's truly discombobulating. And I don't know about you, but my tendency when I just see a lot of words I don't understand is to kind of shut down and say, wait a minute, I don't understand this stuff. I'll pass. I'll wait till the geniuses figure it out and tell me about it. But can we really afford to wait? Right now, a lot of decisions are being made. There is a lot of conversation being had about AI. Can you really afford not to be a part of the conversation when they're talking about essentially a societal transformation, right? They're saying this is a gold rush. A lot of people are going to get rich, but a lot of people are going to lose their jobs in the process because of automation. And speaking of automation, we could have robot overlords at some point if this goes off the rails. Look, it's exciting. They're talking about maybe curing cancer. There are so many advances that are happening right now, and they're happening so fast that it is a wonderful time. But also, I wonder, are we doing it right? And so we need to be asking questions. Thus, this podcast, Answering AI. I'm Joe Vazquez. They call me Joe Newsman. I've been a TV news journalist for more than 3 decades, about half of that time here in San Francisco, where I live. I'm a husband, father of 3, and right now I'm living here in the belly of the beast. I mean, all around this city right now, there are a lot of jobs being created through AI. We see the driverless cars driving right down our street. I just want to make it clear, I am you. Like, we're all in this together. We all have questions. I want to make sure we get some answers. Joining me on this podcast from time to time is Tess Robinson. She is the co-founder of Answering AI, and she is planted with both feet in the tech world, both as an investor and a founder. She is the managing partner at FTB Capital. And Tess, you're a fractional executive, which I'm sure you will explain. And let's just tell us exactly what your expertise is here.
Yeah, so I am a fractional executive. So that came about through a background in helping launch a fund previously. Our venture fund was focused on increasing VC dollars to female founders. And as I was doing work with meeting different founders and meeting people, I found that many of them needed help. They were either not quite at a point they were ready to raise, or they had questions about some business. And I also noticed a few other areas that were needed in the founder community. And so I created Her Connections to really fulfill that. So I do my fractional executive work through there, host founder events.
Well, let me stop you. So I know what an executive is, but what's a fractional executive?
Yeah, so that means that I'm not on full time. So what that means is it's kind of like a contract or a part-time. This is something that a lot of startups will do with different positions. They'll a lot of times maybe have fractional legal, or sometimes even a fractional CFO or a fractional CMO perhaps. But what happens is when you're a startup, you have a certain amount of funds and you're trying to build lean and you don't really quite have the runway, or you're trying to reinvest more of your money into growing the company. So we do fractional work.
You work a fraction of the time with each company.
Yeah.
So we met recently at a public relations conference. It was where AI meets PR, telling the story of AI.
Yeah, we did. It was a couple months ago now, but we met. It was a really great event, the PR Summit, and they were talking about how AI is coming into the fold and being used in the public relations world, including television, news production, media, as far as entertainment. And yeah, I remember there's a lot of different words, a lot of vocabulary and things. And when we were discussing that, it was like, this is something that might be needed. I think you felt very strongly about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of things going on. And if you are immersed in that world like you are, you're in touch with it. But I have to say, I've been paying attention, sort of. But I mean, when, a new thing hits, it's sort of hard to get your head around, especially if you don't speak the language. I'm fascinated by it and I'm intimidated by it. I think there's a demystification process that needs to take place so that more people can participate in the conversation. And thus, the podcast is born.
Yeah, I think that it's something that's very important. And I think one of the things that's probably really important is to talk about, you mentioned what it is, and it's here to demystify, but also what it isn't, right? I mean, there's a lot of tech podcasts out there already, aren't there?
That's right. So, yeah, we'll talk about demystification, and we'll, as much as possible, just like we did with your fractional executive role, we'll just stop in the tracks of the conversation and just say, wait, what is that? And let's define it. So we're just going to pull it back. We're going to say, wait, before we move forward, we have to understand these words and then move forward. So, yeah, there's a lot of tech podcasts, and they're talking about the cutting edge and the very latest. And some of it is, what are the bros at the top level doing? Has Elon passed Mark? Did Apple ever get AI? And they can have that. That's what they're doing on those other podcasts. We're going to just take a big step back and say, let's start from scratch. Let's cover a variety of issues, but we really need to start understanding it at a base level, at a fundamental level, before we start digging in and trying to break stories like I used to as a journalist.
I think it's important too, breaking it down. What do you think is probably the biggest takeaway or the most important part of breaking it down and people to understand? Like if I'm someone, that is not in Silicon Valley, somewhere maybe middle state America, and some of this technology hasn't hit yet, Waymo's driverless cars are happening here and we're around it all the time. But you may feel that if you're somewhere else, you're so far removed, like, why do you even care about this? Why is it important? Like, I don't need to know about this.
Right. Well, it becomes personal when they start to say it's going to take away a whole bunch of jobs, right? That's fundamentally an attention getter when they go, this AI thing, you won't have to work as hard anymore because you won't have a job. It is said sometimes that casually, but for many people, that's a what? Hold on, stop everything. I better pay attention. So, it's getting in our lives. There have been, on the one hand, such advances. And, in the LLMs, the chat GPTs, the help me out with defining LLMs, because there I go. Now I'm dropping something I just learned about. But, right, the language models.
Yep, large language models.
People are starting to use those a lot. It's a part of their lives. They're starting to use chat GPT as the way they used to use Google. So I think it just started becoming more and more prevalent and prominent on people's minds. And then the investment money is through the roof. Trillions of dollars are now being invested in it. It has become a cornerstone of the American economy. It's just impossible to ignore anymore. And so even without understanding it, people are starting to pay attention. And I just think it's time, if we're going to pay attention, let's just understand it a little better. That's where I'm coming from. And, I'm going to put my journalist hat on. I'm going to do my best to, make the complicated more understandable, but also let's be skeptical, professionally. Yeah. So let's just make sure, is what they're saying true? There are a lot of mistakes still. And when are those mistakes going to clean up? And it still feels very robotic because it is robotic. Are they exaggerating how much this is going to affect us, or how much they've already done to this point? Because let's face it, you live in this world. The founders are supposed to exaggerate the possibilities so they can get more investment money. But how much of that is real? And I want to keep it real.
Yeah, I think a little different way of saying that is probably that the founders present what their idea of the ultimate end goal product would be, right? So, I don't think as many people are trying to necessarily, over exaggerate in order to get, more funds and more funding. I think they have an idea, and that's, especially when we talk about some of the really, really big builders and great minds. When you talk about companies like OpenAI, who owns ChatGPT, by the way, if you don't know that. They set out with a vision. And the thing is with any company, you have an idea that you'd like to get to. And when you start out, you might not be able to be there. So there's a step process that it takes. And then, of course, along the journey, other things come up. And then the end goal, I feel like it's going to be a continuously kind of moving target. I think it'll be interesting to see how things develop over the coming years, because you brought up ChatGPT and we were talking about how fast the adoption happened, and I actually kind of have this curious thought about who the real end game is going to be as far as it comes to AI. Because if you're not aware, there's actually multiple companies. When you spoke about the LLMs, the large language models, there's multiple companies that have built their own. You've got OpenAI, which is ChatGPT. You have Anthropic, which is your Claude. And then you also have Google with their Gemini. And there's probably others. But I kind of feel like ChatGPT has the Kleenex effect happening. There's a thing where in an industry, a product gets known as the brand. So the product is not actually, we call it the brand, a brand name, because that brand took so much market share and got so popular with the consumer that's how they just refer to that product. And so Kleenex.
I'm going to go have a Coke. I'm going to call an Uber, but I use Lyft.
Right.
Or usually if I can get it. And right. And I actually use Gemini probably right now more than ChatGPT, although it's constantly improving, and the next one might be better next month, actually.
Yeah. So exactly. So that's the Kleenex effect. So instead of, it's like it's a tissue is the product, but because Kleenex just took so much market share and the consumer became so comfortable with it, we all say like, do you have a Kleenex? But you don't look at the brand and actually see like, oh, it's a Kleenex. It's just a tissue.
So we're talking about ChatGPT, but really the others are on par. Well, I mean, and that's just one aspect of all of this. And I do want to get to longevity because I'm fascinated by it. I know so little about it. Like since the beginning of time, people have been looking for the fountain of youth. Right? We're just looking for ways to live better, longer. And that's something that's caught your eye.
Yeah, so I have launched a new fund, and it for the first fund out of that company, it's called the Longevity Fund. So we're focused on investing in the future of wellness and longevity, health span. One of the things that's exciting about AI, as you mentioned, there's a couple different ways to discuss it. One, like you said, is you don't have to work as much because they're taking your jobs. I do have this real utopian type of idea in my head that is, with the advent of these AI agents and as they become even more functional and multi-solutioned, they do take away the things that we have to spend our day to day on, and we get to focus on the things that really matter, the really impactful things that really move the needle, to use a lot of corporate jargon. And while that is applied in a professional setting, and now you can do a lot more of the critical thinking of the actual decision making that does need to be made by humans. It's kind of like the internet. We don't think about the internet. We don't ask, like, hey, you're going to go on the internet to be able to have the call that we're going to have, right? No, we just do it because it's part of our everyday life. And at some point,
unlike the internet, it thinks for itself, or it is in the process of thinking as it has been programmed. That's another level, right?
Yes, it's a little different.
Yeah, it's a little different. I mean, it is a tool in the end. And to your point about using a tool like this in our everyday lives, I'm old enough to remember when my dad came home with the first calculator, and I'm sure it cost him a ton of money, and I wasn't allowed to use it. I was in fourth grade at the time, and we're doing long division, and I just remember thinking, great, I'll be able to use the calculator, then I won't have to write out all the long division. And he said, no, that would be cheating. And I thought, I can't do long division because I can't keep the columns straight. It has nothing to do with my ability. It's just, and at some point, it's just going to be faster to plug in the stuff in the computer, in the calculator. And so it is that, but to another level, right? Because then it's learning what you want. It's anticipating. It's asking you something you hadn't perhaps thought of. It helps you organize. It's just so much more and so much at once, Tess. And I think that's why this moment is ripe for us to talk about all this stuff.
Yeah, I think it's to your point. It is true. It's very different. It is kind of like that calculator. I remember one of the big things that came up in conversation with the academics was, how are we going to know if people are using AI to write their papers in college anymore? And there's some really good debates on that. There's things that you need to learn how to do it so you understand, and then you don't do it again. Long division, for instance. Do you need to do long division every day by hand? Do you know how to the concept behind it to understand further how it works? that's, a little bit different. I think, and I think empathy, problem solving, critical thinking skills, those are going to become much more important, right? Because
absolutely
not yet, but the AI can't decipher quite that deep, right? It's still got some hiccups. It's still some things that I feel like it's almost like the magic 8-ball.
Yeah, it does feel magical, but let's raise questions. So I want to make sure that we ask the kinds of questions about government regulation that are required for this discussion. Ethics. What about robots? Will they learn enough to be our overlords? I know that sounds like the stuff of fiction, but some of the stuff that they're already doing makes me queasy a little bit, and I'm fascinated. And I want to just make sure to say this, like, while I'm talking about being appropriately skeptical, I want to cheer as loudly as we can as appropriate as well, right? Especially with the health tech that's coming about, especially with the things that are improving our lives. Let's just not forget to cheer.
The healthcare system, the money system, we're going to touch on all these systems this season. I'm excited for it. We're going to be deep diving into all these different areas, and I look forward to hearing from other experts. It's not just going to be me and you talking.
Right, and I want to make it clear, we're all in this together. You have questions, make sure you get them to us so we can ask the people we'll be interviewing. Let's get these questions answered. Answering AI. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode.